So this video is going to be discussing grief at losing a spouse or partner. There's probably going to be a few bits of dark humor in there, and that's definitely not for everyone. But for me and my wife, that was how we coped with her illness a lot of times. And I think she would have loved and appreciated some of this sort of ghoulish things that other people might find a little weird. I hope that somewhere she's able to hear this and is laughing really hard, because her laugh was the most amazing sound in the world. And I'm gonna miss it every day of my life. But to be fair, a lot of this isn't gonna be funny or fun. It'll creep in there because as much pain as I'm in, I'm also trying to remember the stuff that made me smile and laugh and love her more deeply than I've ever felt about anything. So on with the rest of this. Hi, I'm super. By that I don't mean I'm doing great. I'm not doing great. Just Super's been my nickname since I was 19, and it just stuck. That's what everyone I know calls me now. And I'm rambling a bit, whatever. Anyway, my wife is in the trunk of my car. And before you call the police, please let me explain. Madeline passed away at the end of July of this year. She'd been diagnosed with breast cancer 2 years after we got married. And she survived it for almost 12 years. Next month would have been our 14th wedding anniversary. But when she passed, she was in a hospice care facility. I had been taking care of her full time for the last few years, mostly just to spend time with her, because we both knew she was not getting better. But she got to be too sick for me to take care of without help. So when she died, I had to go pick up all her belongings, clothes, etc., and take them home. And it's been almost 6 weeks and they're still in my trunk, because the idea of unpacking it all is overwhelming. So she's in my trunk. In another way, she's hanging around my neck in the forms of the ashes that are in this pendant. She's on the walls and shelves of my entire apartment. Saying a lot, I'm sorry. In pictures of us, Build-A-Bear stuff that we got together, the paper flowers that she made for her birthday a couple of years ago that I just can't bear to take down yet. There's comic art that I got her of some of her favorite characters that's up on the wall and is just a reminder. There's an autographed picture of Danny Trejo that she got at a horror convention like almost 15 years ago, that says, "Madeline, I love you, Danny Trejo." And after she met him and got that autograph, every time, without fail, any time that we saw a show or movie that had Danny Trejo in it, she would turn and look at me with this big smile and say, "He loves me, you know." Like jokingly trying to make me jealous. And it never stopped being funny to me or her. I don't know what that says about us, but And Madeline's everywhere around me. And I love that there are reminders of her, but it also really hurts. Because I can't just reach over sitting on the couch and hold her hand now. I kind of want to tell sort of the story of how we met. This is probably not important to anyone, but it's my video, so I'm doing what I want. We met in a bar connected to a diner that was hosting a LARP, which is a live-action role-playing game. And if that all sounds very weird, it's because it is. I don't want to get too deep into the gaming explanation and mechanics of all that or whatever. It's kind of like a semi-structured improvised acting with no audience, and it's supremely nerdy. But we both are giant nerds, and we were both playing in this game. We had several mutual friends, but we'd never met before at that point. But as part of her costume for this game, for the character she was playing, she was wearing these bright pink leopard print gloves. And it's important because I approached her to comment on these gloves. And this is pretty out of character for me as a person. I'm really generally not a very outgoing or sociable person a lot of the time. But the character that I was playing was. And that's the part of the game, one of the things that draws me into this game in the first place is that it gets me out and interacting with people. And I guess it's a good thing that I did that, because the next few moments of what happened there involving these gloves changed my life. Now, how did that change my life? Here's how. It's because what occurred next was that I walked up to say hi to her and talk about these gloves, and I tripped over my own feet. We were in a bar, but I was not drinking. I'm just clumsy and have been my entire life. So I tripped, and I ended up breaking my fall by landing in her lap. That the thing people will say about, when you're not looking for love, it'll just fall in your lap. I literally fell in her lap. It was awkward. It was not the most dignified of ways to meet someone, but I apologized profusely. And then we started talking about the gloves after regaining composure, because it was awkward. Then the conversation just continued, and I ended up having at least like 2 or 3 hours of conversation with this complete stranger, because the conversation, everything about it just clicked instantly. I wouldn't call it love at first sight or anything, but I definitely came away from having met this person with a feeling like that was a lot of fun. I hope we can do that again. Then I didn't see her again for like 3 months. Just circumstances of life. But when we did both happen to be at the same place, we picked right back up with conversation again as if it had just been the other night. And then she found my AOL Instant Messenger handle, which tells you how long ago this was, because I am ancient. And we started talking online pretty much every day. Not long into that time, we were both single, and I really liked her. I suspected that she liked me as much, hopefully. And I was feeling bold one night, like I usually am not. So I asked her out on a date. We went to a movie. Specifically, we went and saw Sin City. Then we made out in her car in the parking lot until the mall security asked us to leave. That's probably more information than you need, but it was... I say made out, but it was very PG. It was just like a lot of us sort of kissing and snuggling, and that's it. But after that particular night, after that date, we were pretty much inseparable. Our next date was the next day. We just... It wasn't like we're moving too fast or anything. It was just like... we just wanted to be together all the time. If we didn't see each other every day, it was pretty close to it. If we didn't see each other, we were talking on the phone every day, though, which I don't usually like to talk on the phone, so I think that says something in itself. It was about 4 months later, after we had started dating, that we decided to move in together. And from that point, aside from a couple of week-long work trips and 1 or 2 other little things, and a 2-month period during COVID last year when she was in a rehab facility and they were on lockdown and I could not see her at all, we were together nearly every day from 2005 until she passed. And I don't know why I went through that whole story necessarily, other than we always made sense. We just instantly fit together. We belonged together. And it's unfair that she's not here. And I know people say life isn't fair, but does it actually have to be this unfair? Like, what the hell? So trying to watch or listen to any kind of media right now is like an emotional minefield. I try to avoid stuff that I know is going to be difficult right now, but it's impossible to completely succeed at that. Because you think you're fine, and then boom, feelings explosion from a source you weren't expecting. And I have examples here. I'm probably going to spoil some things here, but most of them are old, so I don't care. Some stuff is a no-brainer to avoid. Like, I can't sit and watch the opening of John Wick at this point, because the movie starts with a man losing his wife to a terminal illness, and then the next day, I think, it's been a while since I've watched it because it's really upsetting. The next day, he gets a package delivered to his house, and it is a puppy with essentially a message from her that she set up this thing ahead of time because she knew she was going to be gone. And she set up this thing to get a puppy for him just so he wouldn't be alone without her. So watching that is obviously a hard pass for me right now. And it's easy, but sometimes the feelings creep up on you in places you weren't expecting at all. Like I was watching the Fast and the Furious movies to distract me, because those were never really our thing, and we never really watched them. That just wasn't a thing. So because I had no connection to them emotionally, and they're just, I figure, big silly action stuff, that's probably safe. And it was right up until movie 9, where a character is explaining why he disappeared after he lost his girlfriend because she died. And he said he felt lost. No big, long emotional monologue or anything, just that I felt lost. And suddenly I'm crying during a movie starring Vin Diesel and John Cena, where they strap a rocket engine to a car and send it into outer space. That's how ridiculous this movie is. But I was crying because I felt lost is deeply relatable to me right now. I am feeling lost in a lot of ways because she was my world. And that is very cliche, but it's also absolutely true. Where grief pops up can be very random. I listen to audiobooks before bed a lot of times. A lot of it is either fantasy or science fiction novels, or sometimes biographies of comedians and stuff, or sometimes biographies of historical figures. So I was listening to a book that was written by Amy Poehler, who used to be on Saturday Night Live. And it's standard comedian biography, but it's just something that's sort of innocuous and has, stories of behind the scene things from stuff that they've done, and sometimes that is fun for me. But the thing is, late into this book, she gets to talking about a show that she was on, that she starred in, called Parks and Recreation. And in that, her character, Leslie, falls in love with this guy, Ben Wyatt, and they get married later in the series. And at their wedding, during the vows, she says to him, "I love you and I like you." And that was very descriptive of me and Madeline. And it was something that we would say to each other after seeing the show, just because it was us. I don't know how to describe it more than that, but I've been watching a lot of reruns of things, of different stuff, and I've avoided that show because of the fact that some of that stuff hurts to watch, because it reminds me so much of her and what we had. But I was fine during the audiobook of her discussing things that happened with these characters and behind the scenes things. But then they inserted a clip of their wedding scene, of their wedding vows, into the audiobook, which I wasn't expecting, and then I'm just sitting in my bed alone crying to myself. Sometimes it can be a good cry, in a way. I've been catching up on Doctor Who, which is another show that we watched together. And there's a specific line that gets repeated a few times in a few episodes because it's a plot point. But it's this character, Clara, saying to the Doctor, "Run, you clever boy, and remember me." And I am not delivering it as well as they do because I'm not an actor. Anyway, whatever. But again, I'm watching that, and that happened, and I started crying. Because one of the only things that Madeline was afraid of when she started to get sicker was the idea that she'd be forgotten when she was gone. And I know that's impossible because she was unique. I don't know. If you never met her, it's impossible for me to even describe and make you understand, I feel like, how unique she was. But when we were discussing what she would want after she was gone, her only real wish for any kind of memorial service or anything was our friends just informally telling stories about her and crying and laughing and remembering who she is because she didn't want to be forgotten. So remember me. As I'm watching this thing, that line kind of wrecked me for a minute. I was driving in my car and I had some streaming music on random just playing, and it queued up this Aerosmith song, I Don't Want to Miss a Thing. And that song never meant anything to me before Madeline. But then we went to a wedding in 2009. And it was a wedding for two of our friends. We were both in the wedding party. And we were dancing at the reception, and this song comes on, and she just starts singing it to me. And she sang the whole song while we were dancing, just us staring into each other's eyes. And she's just singing, and I'm just looking at her. And it's just a very vivid memory for me. And it's weird because I don't feel like before that moment, I mean, this song was like 10 years old already at that point, I think. But I'd never really heard the words to it before. And it was only a few months after that wedding that she was diagnosed with cancer. So it's kind of that wedding and us dancing and her singing to me, and the few pictures that I have of us at it that are some of my favorite pictures of us. It's one of the last happy memories that I have before she got sick. So when that song and that memory surprise attacked me in my car, I had to just turn off my stereo, because the other option was to freak out and wreck my car because I was crying too hard to see the road. If a show or movie starts playing a Billy Joel song, regardless of what the song is, it will take me back to our second date where she was singing some of his songs to me in her car. It takes me back to the night I proposed to her, because I made a video for her that used one of those songs in it. It takes me to having gotten tickets for her to see Billy Joel for her birthday, because she'd always loved his music. I had never really been a fan of it until we started dating, but she loved it, and she had never gotten to see him live. And I just wanted to make sure that she got the chance to be able to do that, because even back then it was, almost 5 years into her illness, and we didn't know how much longer she had, even then, because her health had been a roller coaster of, getting very, very, very ill and then getting better. And it just kept going like that. So we never knew, how long she would have. So I wanted to get her tickets to this and go. And we got to go to this show. It was a really great show. She had a lot of fun. And I'm glad I got to give that to her. But hearing any of those songs now just is memories of her. And so, yeah, I just try to avoid that if I can. There are things that we loved to do, places that are so connected to our relationship that driving past them hurts. I drove past a Denny's the other week that was the first place we ever went together alone, just as friends at that point. But it still is just a really good memory for me, because part of our, real relationship sort of started sitting at a table in there eating, this sort of generic diner food. Like, it's just a Denny's, but it's also more than that now for me. Her favorite of the various Marvel movies was Doctor Strange, and in a few years they're going to do a sequel to that, and she isn't going to get to see it. And I just feel like I want to apologize in advance to the strangers that are going to be around me in the theater, assuming theaters are safe by then, because I'm probably going to cry during this movie at a moment that doesn't make any sense to cry. But it doesn't make sense to me that I just had to watch this amazing woman slowly get sicker for over a decade and then lose her. So, nothing makes sense. I wish that she could have seen the new Suicide Squad movie that came out, because I think she really would have appreciated King Shark. I know that's a weird thing, but it just, everything about that character just seems like the kind of thing that she would have really enjoyed. And I hate that she can't see it. There's just so much that I'm mourning that she missed out on, or that we lost because of this illness. And she apologized to me a few times throughout her illness, and I just kept telling her, this isn't something that you did. This isn't something that you did to me. This is something that happened to us. When we got married, one of the things that I said in our vows was that I didn't know what the future was going to be like. But I knew that no matter what it was, I wanted to be just standing next to her the whole way. Because that's just where I belong. I don't know. I'm not entirely sure where I belong now, But during the course of this illness, before that we'd bought a house. We were very sure that we wanted to have kids. And I think that she would have been a really fantastic mom. And it just couldn't happen. And, the cancer took that away from us. We ended up losing that house. Eventually, I had to make a choice about my career, because it was either I was going to stay home with her and take care of her. And the last few years I've known that it was getting closer to the end, and I knew that I needed to be home with her. So, I gave up my job. I'd had that job for pretty much all of my adult life, and I don't regret it. It sucks, but I don't regret it, because I looked at the choices I had and I went, okay, if I stay home with her, I'm going to always have the time that I got to spend with her. if I continue to go to work every day and I, maybe have somebody else coming and taking care of her while I'm gone, I'm going to regret that. Because nobody ever looks back at the end of their life and is like, man, I really wish that I'd spent more time at work. Like, that's not a thing. I'm glad about all of the time that I got with her. In the last few years, we got to sit through and watch, go through all of Star Trek and other things that she had never really like watched through, but was like, the stuff of this I've seen, I've enjoyed, but I just don't know it. So we would go through and watch those things together, and I'm glad I got that time. But it still sucks to have lost all of this. And it sucks even more to have lost her because she was pretty great. And she was too young to go. But I'm going to keep her on my walls. I'm going to keep her in the pendant that I have here. And most of all, I'm going to keep her in my heart. And that's not going to change because she was part of my heart. But for right now, she's still in the trunk of my car because I can't I just can't face unpacking that yet.